Hello and welcome. I'm Professor Khalid Khan from University of Granada in Spain, and today our topic of discussion is research metrics, and we will also explain what is the culture of pressure to publish or perish in the academic world. To discuss this, I have with me Professor Bassel. Bassel, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me today, Khaled. So my name is Bassel Wattar. I am a associate professor of reproductive medicine and the director of the clinical trials unit at Anglia Ruskin University and a consultant gynecologist in the UK.
Okay, thank you. So, the research metrics are at three different category levels. One relates entirely to journals, another relate to articles, and the final one relates to individuals or the authors. And the three of these merge with each other in producing a culture in the academic world, which is known as pressure to publish or perish. And the idea inside this culture is that the number of papers and their citations are far more important than the quality, integrity, or impact of the
Mm.
research. So, this is what we wish to cover today. But before we proceed, I'd just like to give you my own background as a researcher, where I started medical school in 1983. And after completing medical school and completing my house job in Kenya, my first paper got published in 1990. So it's nearly 35 years of journey through the academic world. Having completed my residency and research training in Canada, I moved to the UK, where over 25 years I had the chance to work as a researcher, publishing over 600 papers, but also edit journals and work in my capacity as professor in universities in London and Birmingham. And on moving to Spain in Granada 5 years ago, I continued in my role as editor and professor. So these are the organizations, bodies, or groups of people and institutions that compete with each other. And in their competition, the anxiety is created by about their status by metrics
Mm.
and impact. But metrics are the ones that are in use on a daily basis. Basil, you commenced your career as an academic not long ago. What has been your experience with respect to the competition that exists?
I think, as you highlighted, each of these stakeholders, they have interest to largely financial based to justify their academic activities, and these key performance indicators or metrics have become essential. So for researchers, they're essential for furthering their academic progression, justifying getting the grants and funding, and build the legacy for universities. These are key sort of performance indicators to attract more funding and attract key researchers. Same for funders, would be it public or charities. These performance indicators justify the expenditure they incur in what sort of in what fields of research. And finally, for publishers, and then, I mean, among all these publishers are the only that are a for-profit business, so they are the most in competition to really rank up the highest. Well, we will talk about different metrics to basically attract more researchers and therefore increase their profit out of the academic process.
Okay, so that takes us directly to talk about the pressure to publish or perish in the context of how journals work. So, journal metrics are based primarily on citations. There are also alternative metrics called alt metrics. But the key measure is what is called the impact factor. So let's take here as an example the journal Trials. In 2022, its impact factor was 2.5. This meant that its articles published in 2020 and 21, the 2 year period, were in the next year in 2022. On average, they were cited 2.5 times. So here is a graph of impact factor of a journal. And these type of assessments graphically are the feature of daily life of journal editors and managers. There are also other metrics, for example, 5 year impact factor. And this is a graph of a competition between women's health journals. And you can see that they all more or less do not change their ranking,
Positive.
but keep gradually rising. And there is a competition amongst journals. And I would say that competition is unhealthy. Basil, what is your opinion about this and your role as an editor?
I think the impact factor is has its uses, but generally speaking, it's safe for us to say it's not a very smart nor informative factor or like metric because number one, as we can see from the graph, largely speaking, as journals keep publishing and look forward, the impact factor will keep rising gradually. It's a rare event that a journal impact factor will suddenly drop. It does happen, although it's rare. And the second most important element, it doesn't tell us the quality of the research nor the impact of the research. So some particular types of publications, say meta-analyses, they are notoriously cited very frequently, and same for, say, older trials, but that doesn't mean that if a newer meta-analysis come out, it is of least impact or more impact. So, and same, for example, for editorials that often, for one reason or another, an editorial is cited quite substantially, but it doesn't mean that this editorial is adding significant and scientific information to the literature. So the impact factor is no more than a citation of metric replications. It's by no means a very reliable quality marker of a journal or of research.
I think two key factors to consider here is that even retracted papers can be cited,
Correct.
but the impact factor makes no adjustment for these type of
Correct.
research misconduct appearing in the publication process. Plus, self-citation is also not adjusted for. So if a journal repeatedly cites its own articles, it gets equal credit for it
Yeah.
relative to citations in other journals.
And like a textbook example is checklist, like they say, the Prisma checklist is it has a very high citation profile, but it doesn't mean that this is actually a new information generation
Yep.
exercise. It's just a checklist.
Yeah. Okay, so here we see how journals measure their performance. We now move on to look at how an article's performance can be measured. Here we have citations, but we also have consideration of the material published in the social media called tweetations.
Mhm.
And these measures are nowadays becoming popular. For example, in every published article, most journals also indicate what is called the alt metric. Now, you'll notice in the graph above this article that tweetations appear ahead of citations, and the tweetations, as measured by alt metric, can also in detail be assessed
Yep.
in terms of where the material presented in the article is cited in the social media. How would you consider the social media citation versus scientific citation in a journal?
I think it's a very important new addition because nowadays, and that is specifically for health research and clinical sciences, the focus is no longer for us to publish for our peers, but rather we are publishing for our patients to actually read the scientific outputs, and we're more focusing on having lay summaries of our research. And so this dissemination via news outlets, via Wikipedia, via lay blogs, for example, and again, X or Twitter, is very, very useful to engage the wider community. So not just the scientific community, but rather than the end consumers, which is of great importance. And actually it is a great mark of impact, which is what we desire, is our research to be impactful and helpful for society. So capturing and moving away from blind metrics into more informative metric is definitely a positive step.
Okay, I think it's important to highlight that these type of social media-based metrics are taking uh, such a high profile nowadays
Mm.
that even researcher ranking can be developed based on their work being recirculated
Mhm.
on the social media. This allows us to move on to individual metrics. So here I'll give you results for my own metrics in research.com under the category of medicine. My disciplinary or D index is 108. In another metric based on expertise, measured via publications within PubMed, I am ranked high in this field above other experts in the top percentile. In ResearchGate, we also get a measure of ranking in percentile against other researchers in the same field. And finally, and most importantly, as shown from the Google uh, graph, I have a H index of over 100. Now, H index, what is it? H index is, as given here by the example, if an individual researcher has an H index of 5, it means that they have at least 5 papers that have been cited 5 times or more in the scientific literature. So these individual metrics play an important role in appointment, promotion, and award of grants. Basil, what is your comment concerning this type of assessment?
Again, I think while it is helpful, it can create this false narrative of the pressure to rank the get a higher ranking and higher metric across all these different tools. Like for example, like common practice that we see often is self-citation, where you keep citing your own paper so that you can rank up your own H index. Or for those who work across larger groups where they could collaborate on several papers, their H index will be rising very rapidly without them actually doing the main work of the research. I'm not saying this is an ethical practice. I'm just saying these are consequences of this race to score higher on these metrics. They can be unfriendly for someone who works, for example, in a very niche area where it's very hard for them to get secondary citation. And sometimes there are flukes, like when we saw with the COVID pandemic, there were a lot of people who getting very high citations and ranking up their index very quickly because of the rush to publish and cite in COVID. And then after the COVID pandemic, things went back to status quo. So we have to interpret them with caution, basically, and use them judiciously.
All right. Well, because there is so much emphasis on metrics, and it's seen as the main reason behind the academic culture of pressure to publish or perish, um, mainly uh, uh, produced through the competition that exists between individuals and organizations. There has been a move towards the avoidance of metrics in the way that you have just seen in our presentation. So DORA is an organization that is even talking about complete elimination of journal-based metrics in carrying out research assessments. Equally, there are other initiatives like Scope and Coara, which also talk about moving away from journal-based metrics and to assess something that is more close to the expectation that science should contribute to societal benefit. And within this, there is the need to emphasize that research integrity is taking the front seat in this stage. So there are initiatives that highlight that instead of just counting citations, one got to look at whether articles have been published with transparency and with openness. Basil, how would do you see these initiatives taking place in the workplace?
I think they're definitely good and positive initiatives in the perspective of really reorienting the focus around the impact and benefits of research to society, rather than a rigid metrics that don't readily translate into impact. But unfortunately, their uptake to date has been very limited, and that is due to the lack of another system where that can enable researchers to progress their careers, university to demonstrate the value of their works, and for funders to demonstrate the value of the funds they spent. So we need, I think, broader thinking and a bit more comprehensive and holistic system that can integrate such initiatives with a workable solution in everyday practice.
Okay, so our summary is that the citation based metrics that exist uh, have a potential negative impact. They may even be the drivers of research misconduct and questionable research practices. And obviously, research conducted and published with flaws in integrity cannot make any contribution to societal benefit. In fact, it may be harmful for society. In this case, there is a need to move away from them
Mhm.
and towards metrics that measure directly how research is impacting society. Would you give any concluding remark, Basil, over here?
I think employers and researchers should always stay focused on delivering high quality research that is directly beneficial and influential to, in our case, patients and to the wider society. And I think that should be the North Star, and developing more meaningful interpretation and performance indicators that can highlight how we're reaching that noble objective.
Okay, thank you very much, Basil.
Thank you.